and we could talk about amendments. This is a political timetable.
Tomorrow, if the coalition's against it, the Greens are against it, the independent senators are against it, it looks like it's going to be voted down. So what's the point of having it unless you're just more interested in coming up with a trigger for a double dissolution?
The only reason this will be voted down is because Malcolm Turnbull has decided that he has to appease the climate change sceptics in his own party. This has not come on by ambush. This has been developing, this has been coming up for 18 months. It's no surprise. It's like someone turning up on the day of the HSC and saying, sorry, I'm not ready, I need more time to study.
You're still negotiating with industry.
I need more time to study.
You guys haven't finalised the scheme yourselves.
This is pretty appalling. The opposition have had plenty of time to prepare on this.
There's plenty more time.
Look, I'll tell you what's really going on. Malcolm Turnbull will vote against it tomorrow to appease the sceptics in his own party, and then when it comes back in 3 months' time, he'll vote for exactly the same legislation because he's terrified about a double dissolution. It's got nothing to do with the economy.
Okay.
It's got nothing to do with climate change. It's all about Malcolm and protecting his leadership. And that's why when I've asked this question on this show 3 times about whether you would vote against this twice, you refuse to answer the question.
Let me answer the question.
Will you vote against it twice?
Are you going to consider amendments after Thursday?
We will consider amendments.
Yes, we will be having.
Show me the amendments.
We will have amendments after Thursday, but we put forward 9 points a few weeks ago and said that's basically our heads of agreement. No, they are things like productivity commission.
This is not a debating society, Scott. This is a parliament, and if there is legislation before the parliament, we deserve to see amendments, not dot points. Don't show us dot points. Show us amendments.
That is an absolute excuse for not engaging the issue.
Well, we look forward to seeing proper amendments put forward after we can assume that this will be voted down tomorrow. Look, there also has been a lot of speculation about Malcolm Turnbull's leadership tied up with the disunity we have seen from the coalition in recent weeks. Yesterday, we saw the Liberal backbencher Wilson Tuckey talking tough about what he was going to say to the party room about Malcolm Turnbull being arrogant and inexperienced. But I understand, Scott, that he got the message loud and clear that criticising Mr Turnbull in public isn't something that his colleagues are going to be tolerating.
Well, that's right. And I think that issue was comprehensively dealt with in the party room yesterday, decisively and completely, and to the unanimous acclamation of those who are in there. So, look, I'm pleased that matter is settled, and the matter is settled.
Can I say this in defence of Wilson, though? I can understand someone who does...
You're defending Wilson?
Yeah, well, I think this is a point that should be made, and that is that it's fair enough if you don't accept the evidence not to accept the solution. That's what Barnaby says, that's what Wilson says. But I think we should be critical of someone who says, I accept the evidence that human activity is warming the planet. I actually argued to the Prime Minister that we should sign Kyoto. This is what Malcolm Turnbull did. But at the last minute decides to do nothing, decides not to act, not to support the legislation because he thinks it's in his political interest. Now that is the problem we've got here. Malcolm thinks we should act, but is doing nothing for political reasons.
We are, but if I could be fair to respond, though, on that issue, he's saying that, what we're seeing from Kevin Rudd is not a willingness to get his own bill through. And the point I made about John Howard before was right. He was prepared to do what it took to get his bill through. Kevin Rudd is not.
Okay, that is not what we already have made. Sure. So let's move on. There was no mention of the Oscar affair yesterday in question time, but we do expect to hear about it in the Senate today when the Senate decides whether or not this is something that should be examined by the Privileges Committee. Scott, what is the harm in having a thorough examination of that affair and the people who played a role in it?
Well, I think the first point to make about it is the Australian public certainly have moved on, and the coalition has moved on. If the government wants to try and breathe life into a dead issue to play politics, well, that's up to them. But one would have to be very careful and very sure that the government's intentions here is not to continue just to try and blow this issue up in the public arena, and was quite serious about an inquiry. And I think they're the things that are before us at the moment. But what is crystal clear is the Australian public is sick of that discussion. We've moved on, the government should move on, and I think that's where the matter rests.
Jason Clare, is this just a witch hunt?
Well, I think the Australian public was sick of the behaviour they saw in Malcolm Turnbull and his lack of judgment there. This is a serious matter that deserves serious investigation. It'll be considered, hopefully, by the Privileges Committee, which has dealt with these sorts of things in the past in a bipartisan way. It's chaired, I think, by an opposition MP, and if they've got nothing to hide, they've got nothing to fear.
I'm just going to break in here. We are hearing reports that authorities in Papua New Guinea are saying that they have found the wreckage of the missing plane. This plane was missing for nearly 24 hours. We know there were 13 people on board, including 9 Australians. We're just waiting to hear some more details about exactly the location of this plane. We know that Australia has been helping with the search efforts this morning. The government has been sending in some Defence Force aircraft, including helicopters, to help with the search efforts. We're going to have a lot more detail on the recovery of this plane coming up in the next news bulletin, so do stay with us for that. Scott Morrison, Jason Clare, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will be going to the news now to give you some more details on this breaking news that authorities in Papua New Guinea have found the wreckage of the plane. So we'll go there now. For now, though, I'm Ashley Gillen. Thanks for your company. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning.